this is Brother Tushka thinking out loud about the end times. Thank you for joining us for part two of a two-part series looking at the UPC code and the concept of that code and technology. Has that evolved and is continuing to evolve into what eventually will be the mark of the beast? Now, if you haven't watched part one of this series, this might be a good opportunity to press pause, go back, watch video number one, so you get a better understanding of what this video is talking about. So in our first video, we talked about how the UPC code came into existence, and for all intents and purposes, no one can argue that it serves its purpose. It makes things more convenient, makes things more efficient, quicker, easier, and both for the merchant and for the consumer, there's certainly advantages. That in itself seems to be a bit innocuous. However, if you look deeper at the concept, we can see that there might be something going on below the surface that isn't all that great for us, the consumer, and the masses after all. Now, keep in mind that Satan has been working behind the scenes over the decades, preparing, even maybe apparently at a slow pace, getting ready at some point to usher in his new world order and the beast system. Now, just like playing chess, Satan has a strategy. He has pieces on the chess table, if you will, and he's moving them exactly where he wants them, when he wants them, and he has, in his own mind, a way that he thinks he's going to win the game. Now, if you read the Bible, we know that that's not going to happen. But nevertheless, we know that he is even so deceived that he can believe his own lies. But one thing that you have to, if you're going to give the devil his due, is that the analogy of a frog slowly warming up the water in the pot that he rests in will continue to stay there as the degrees of the water increase incrementally, to the point where he will even stay there to his death when the water reaches its boiling point. This would be a much different scenario if you just took a frog and tossed it into a pot of boiling water. That frog quickly would jump out to spare its life. Well, in the same sense, Satan has worked over the years, slowly turning up the heat, creating his system in order for the world to become desensitized to all the changes and the things that we are losing more and more control over. For the sake of convenience, for the sake of technology, when we consider that these products are being tracked, grocery stores simply have to press a couple keys on their computer screen and see that we're running low on canned corn. And they could order it, keep the shelves stocked up. At the same time, when products are not moving quickly, that too can be tracked, even to the point where management or those in charge may decide that this product or brand hasn't been selling well. Perhaps it needs to be discontinued. But never before has this data been available to those who manage and operate the functions of supermarkets, where that they can use this data to make wise business decisions. Now, it all depends on this UPC code, which we can also refer to as a mark. If this mark goes beyond the products that we buy in a supermarket, can the same functions be done? Well, in fact, as you know, this has already happened. There is something called a quick response code or a QR code, which has been invented and launched in the early 90s. These codes hold a lot more data, and you see them in areas that you normally wouldn't see a UPC code. This allows a cell phone with a particular app to scan this QR code, and your cell phone will know to go to a particular website and gather a lot of information. Now, this has caused a lot of convenience and also the transfer of information. For any person who's carrying a cell phone and has this app, they are now the ones who are scanning the codes themselves and attaining the information from this code or mark in order to find out more about products, or maybe a movie listing, or maybe a menu of a restaurant. But the QR codes have allowed for more control for the consumer to attain this desired information. So we see a step up from the UPC code, where the computer would be located at the cash register. And you would bring your product to the checkout line, and somebody else who was hired by the store, a cashier, would scan the product, the computer would process what you're purchasing, and then you were charged a fee for the products, and then you would take them home. But with the QR codes, the manufacturer or whomever who wants to provide information to a potential consumer could put QR codes anywhere, on windows, on countertops, at cash registers, in front of a product, on the window of a car. The list goes on and on. In fact, you could find a computer program where you could create your own QR code if you wanted to, and put the information that you wanted the person who scanned the code to receive. But as wonderful as this sounds, there's some major problems with QR codes. But before we get into that, just think about how we went from the grocery store shelf to any potential possible area. The computer has gone from the checkout line to the phone that you carry in the palm of your hand every day. It's interesting evolution that this code and this mark has extended its territory, and the computer system involved in reading the mark is now available for everyone who owns a cell phone, which is most of the population of the day we live in. But the problem that we come around with the QR codes cannot be ignored, because just like the UPC code and the convenience that that offers, there's also a price that is paid. The QR codes has been abused. See, when you scan a QR code on your phone and press click or go, it can add a contact onto your phone and allow bad guys to look like they know you when they call your phone. So in other words, once your phone has received that information, the information on the QR code could add a contact onto your phone that you're not even familiar with. So instead of a unusual, unknown phone number coming in, there now has a name to it, which increases the likelihood of you answering the phone call. Instead of a phone number, now you actually see a contact's name. Because of this too, QR codes, social engineering can be used against you. You can more easily be made for your phone to actually call a particular number that the QR code wants you to call without you even knowing. This will allow the recipient of the phone call to be able to find out your location of where you made the phone call. This gives the bad guys more opportunity to not only know your phone number, but to know the area in which you have made the phone call. Additionally, the QR codes can allow social engineering to be able to track and follow your social media accounts without you even knowing it. The QR code can assign you a definitive Wi-Fi network that is different than the one that you think that you're linked onto. This can allow the maker of the QR code to more easily hack your phone now that you may be connected to a local isolated Wi-Fi network. So if you see the risks connected to the QR codes, you may think twice before you use that app. Going from the QR codes, we have seen the chip being introduced and is now placed on most credit cards. It has replaced the magnetic strip. The magnetic strip had its flaws, was easy to steal, replicate, and where you could do a touch-free transaction by simply placing your credit card close to the reader. As we look at this chip, we can see that this is the technology that is giving us the ability to hold enough stored information that this chip can eventually replace the need even for a credit card, because really what is needed is the chip, not the piece of plastic with the numbers on it, of course not even the magnetic strip, but the chip itself is what empowers the credit card to do its function. Now, even though there is security, some level at least, of having the chip on the credit card, one can still steal that information. It's still possible to misplace your credit card. And wouldn't it make sense if something that stored your personal information, that allowed you to make transactions, that allowed you to be tracked, to allowed you to be identified, and perhaps, even more than that, perhaps even be able to affect the person who contains the implant of the chip, to affect them biologically, mentally, or perhaps even spiritually. Well, this technology is now come to reality in the RFID chip. In fact, there are companies throughout the world that have instituted for their employees to have the option of having a chip placed in their hand so that they can be able to have security, identification, trackability in their place of employment. To the human eye, this may seem like, wow, what a convenience, what great technology. However, examining all these possible ways of making transactions and having identification, it seems up to this point that the technology of the RFID chip seems to be the closest in relation to the mark of the beast in Revelation chapter 13. For in Revelation chapter 13, written thousands of years before this technology came to birth, predicted that there will be a mark placed on the right hand or forehead, and that this would be needed in order to buy or sell. And so we are at the doorstep of this being implemented. If you notice the transgression that the enemy would like to do, he wants to get not only influence you by what is going on in the world and the world system and the message that this world offers, but he wants to get inside. It was kind of cute when you bought computers back in the 80s and 90s where Intel would have the little symbol of Intel inside. Well, guess what? Satan wants to be inside you. He wants to have control over you, and this is the means by which I believe that he's going to do this. Technologically, using a chip that is going to be mandated for all to take during the tribulation period. Satan has gone from the technology of introducing through convenience, efficiency, ease, and security of having the UPC code on store products, and then going to the QR code, which provides helpful information for people who want to use their cell phone, to a chip that is placed on the credit card that stores your information for purchases to make work towards a cashless society, to getting a chip inside your hand. And then also combine that with the technology that's being introduced by Neuralink, where a chip is directly connected to the human brain. We can see this evolution went from the store shelf to everyday places that we visit, even beyond the supermarket, to our wallets and purse where we keep our credit cards, to inside or on our hand and foreheads, and even attached to our brains. Satan has been on a mission to get closer and more intimate to those who he has been targeting, to the point where if he can capture and take over the very person and soul, if allowed to do so, he will. Praise be to God that this will not and cannot happen to those who belong to him. So if we consider the evolution from the UPC code to the mark of the beast, we see some similarities. Back when the UPC code came out was on products, the products were marked Merchandise was tracked, it had ownership, and eventually it was consumed. Well, Mark of the Beast, do you become the product? Do you become marked? What about being tracked? Even ownership to the beast system, the Antichrist, to Satan, and ultimately, product that's been marked will be consumed. Sadly, in the lake of fire. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. This is the day to make sure, if you do not know Jesus, this is the only way in which we must be saved, is placing our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who's the Son of God, who died on the cross for our sins, died, was buried, and rose again, and he's coming back. Place your faith in him today. The very technology that is present right now and the beast system that is quickly going into place is targeting you, your family, and everyone on earth to become slaves and products and to be owned and operated by the beast system, the Antichrist, and Satan himself. Folks, we hope that you enjoyed this journey, but we also hope that you realize the sobering reality of the world that we live in today. Maranatha, come Lord Jesus, and rescue us from this corrupt and evil system. We do hope to see you here, there, but especially in the ear. God bless.